How about now? I just enabled my microphone. Do you hear the sound? Yes? No? No? Yes? Yep, that's good. All right, so thanks for coming. This is the end of the last session of the year 2018. And it's not the last one in the Heisei, right? We still have Heisei next year. But this is a very last session this year. Thanks for coming. And shall we say Merry Christmas? It depends on the region, right? So happy holidays. And that's proper say greeting, right? And we have a very special guest today from Melbourne, right? Yeah, that's correct. So could you introduce yourself, please?
Yes, good evening, everybody. My name is Peter Myers. I'm a data professional and a Microsoft MVP from Melbourne, Australia. I've got a slide on this.
Yeah. So he's a MVP for the Power BI or data platform.
Data platform.
Yeah, but he's explaining what developer can do or what developer should know about Power BI. So interesting enough, this is his third time in Microsoft Japan office. He will provide the session to the Power BI user group, right? This summer?
No, in March this year.
Okay. And this is the third session about Power BI in this meetup group as well. So Power BI is definitely a very big hot topic. So please enjoy. And let me switch to you.
Okay.
So present everything. And how?
Let me mute mine.
Yeah, please. And how about now? Where's the recording? What is that? So yeah, please mute. Oops. Could you mute the mic? Not only mic, the speaker as well. Check. Microphones?
Yeah.
How about now? How about now? Good? And how about online?
You have to wait. It's still at here.
I know. I want the
AV.
Check.
Wow, my voice came through really clear. The Starship Enterprise is about to depart.
Sorry, turned off my. Let me mute yourself. Sorry, you already muted, right? How about that? Yeah. How about now? Check. Still a bit of an echo, but that should be
This is going
fine.
to be like an hour and a half of me making fun of them.
Yeah. Right, because you're. Are you using HDMI? Yeah.
Yes, so far.
We can come through here. So you mute your microphone, you mute your
Yeah, like it's a direct communication.
not only for this one, but for the laptop level.
On screen.
Yeah, mute. Over this. There you go. All right. Sounds good. Is everything okay now?
Right.
Check, check. But to make this happen.
There. Now it's fixed.
Okay, so testing 1, 2, 3, and we have liftoff. Is that right?
Yeah. And if you speak to the mic, please. This sounds now.
Testing 1, 2, 3. You guys in the back of the room, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Do I need the microphone if I speak like this? Okay.
Okay. Sorry to that.
Are we all systems go? Can I start?
No.
All right, let's make a start. So tonight, I understand you're a .NET user group. So, you know, my background many years ago was as a software developer. In fact, when .NET was in beta, I was working with it. ASP.NET was one of my first projects. But I'm more of a data professional. So I've been a SQL Server person for many, many years now, and I specialize in business intelligence. And so for an audience like this, it might be that you're really core developers and you're not data people. Can you just give me some feedback on that? Are you more, is anyone a core developer but not a data person? Is that who I'm speaking to tonight? Okay. All right. So the worlds collide. The fact that I can talk to developers about data and the potential for you to integrate, extend, or embed the cool capabilities of Power BI, that's what I'm here to talk to you about tonight. So I know that I introduced myself very briefly before, but let me do it again with a slide to back it up. And by the way, this presentation is available to download as a PDF, and I will share the link with you at the end. So if you feel compelled to take photos or take notes, you don't need to. Every slide you see here tonight, you can have access to. So my name is Peter Myers. I come from Melbourne, Australia. I am a data specialist and specializing in business intelligence and almost exclusively with the Microsoft platform. So that would mean Access databases, not really, but SQL Server, working with Power BI being the new generation self-service business intelligence. That's probably enough about who I am. What I do like to do is employ the very technology that we're here to talk about tonight. And so I invite you in this moment to use the QR code or the tiny URL. And what it's going to do is give you a very simple web app that's going to ask you 5 questions. I would like you to complete those questions. And when you click submit, this is a real-time dashboard that's going to deliver the results back to us here. My apologies, part of it's in Japanese. I thought my entire audience tonight would be Japanese. See how you go. All right, so I'll give you guys, maybe a minute to open up that web page, and as truthfully as you can answer, tell me a little bit about who you are. Also, I made the assumption that I was presenting to people in Tokyo. I don't know who the remote people are. My apologies if your location is not available in the survey. Okay, we have one in. Thank you. Awesome. So as these results come in, just reflect that this is a real-time dashboard.
Two different people from 2 different locations. Yeah. Or is that not a location?
The locations are filtering out. If you choose other, then you won't see it turn up in the map.
We only have male in this room. Where's the diversity? We need more different.
Yes, where are the females tonight?
Yeah.
There are none. There are no female developers in Tokyo. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes. Address in this room.
Okay. Awesome. So tonight we're going to cover real-time dashboards. I'll talk to you about 3 different techniques that you can use to develop. They're typically a software development activity to achieve this type of responsiveness. All right, I'm probably not going to get started with the presentation until I see, I don't know, what do you think? Are there 20 people in the room? 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16. All right.
You're welcome.
Problem fixed. We do have female software developers.
The operation. Identify as female for the next 1 hour.
All right. Okay. So now the old-fashioned approach would be I used to ask you questions and you would put your hand up, like who's worked with Power BI before, but I don't need to do that anymore, right? So I can simply put together a simple survey and then express the results up here. Of interest for me is less your age, is less your gender, but it's more about who you are as a professional. So as expected, this is an audience of software developers, so I'm going to be speaking almost exclusively about Power BI in the context of what you guys do day in, day out. The Power BI experience is an interesting one here. So what I could do on this dashboard is just go ahead and focus in on this one. Now, as a visualization, what it's showing me is that the different ratings and the frequency. So by far the biggest is that 6 of you have said that you have absolutely no background in Power BI. So I'll launch into an introduction in just a moment. We have a person that said 10. Okay, so whoever that is, I'll invite you to come up here and present. Who is that in the room today? I didn't submit one. But what we could do is look at this and say, well, hold on a minute. You know, that's not a really good order to put them in. Why isn't this sorted in the order of, you know, ranking 0 through 10? What order is it? Yeah, it's ascending frequency. It's not actually the rating itself. But for those that are new to Power BI, let me give you a brief introduction. Power BI essentially is a data visualization service. Obviously, there's a lot more that goes on because if you're going to visualize data, then the service itself needs to connect to, prepare it, optimize it, make it available for visualization. We're not really here to talk about that topic tonight, although it's one of the most interesting topics about Power BI, and the ability to connect to practically any type of data and present it in a meaningful way, like a dashboard here. So Power BI then has 2 different approaches for delivering the visualization of data. What you see here is the dashboard, all right? And when you think about in the language, the use of dashboard is typically used with driving a car, right? So the concept of a dashboard in Power BI is that we don't want to bombard you with lots of detail. We want you to be able to see at a glance key metrics that are going to inform you about what's relevant. Okay, so tonight, at a glance, there are 16 people that submitted. At a glance, I can see the biggest role in the room is software. And then I can see that the 6 people here have got 0 background in Power BI. That's what a dashboard is designed to do. It's high-level monitoring. And it's very much a passive experience that you should be able to just glance at it. Okay, when you're driving a car, you don't want to be distracted by lots of detail because you're focused on safely driving, right? But you do want facts. How fast am I going? Like, am I speeding? Am I running out of fuel? And if so, alert me that I can take immediate action to get back on course. Now, the dashboard is just one approach to visualizing data. Now, if I click on a tile, this is drilling through to the second experience in Power BI, which is the report. Now, whereas a dashboard emphasizes a more passive experience, it could be on a non-touch device, you just want to know facts. A report is an interactive experience over data. So, for example, if I wanted to know who, the other person is, this interaction of clicking on that segment of the donut performs what's known as a cross filter. So it allows a deeper exploration of the data. All right, so dashboards are passive monitoring, reports are more about interactivity, discovery, and exploration. Okay, so I could look at this and say, well, as the owner of the report, let me edit it because I really don't like the order. And that really should be sorted by Power BI experience. And there we fix that problem. I really want this to be from 0 through to 10. The other thing, just to quickly show you, is that returning to the dashboard, a valid question might be tonight, but what is the average experience in the room? Can anyone maybe guess? What's the average rating? 1, 2. Now, when you think about what data visualizations are there to do, they're there to support decision making. Do we want our decision makers guessing or approximating? Probably not. What we want to deliver is up-to-date, meaningful information so that the decisions that are made are fast and accurate. That's essentially what business intelligence is striving to do. So I just want to demonstrate one feature is the natural language questioning. So here in the dashboard, one approach is that I could just come in here and say, well, I'll just ask the question, what is the Power BI experience as an average? And there it is, it's 2.19. Now, if that's something that I want to continue monitoring, then here in the top right corner, I can pin this back to the dashboard, and then I can continue to monitor that metric. Perhaps average age is less important. Let me get rid of that. And then what I have is this new tile down here. Okay, so in a nutshell, that's Power BI. So how awesome would it be? It's available in 42 languages. Natural language. Oh, okay. English and Spanish. 2 languages at the moment, and Spanish is still in preview. So what it would mean is you can develop your models that use Japanese words, but they will have to construct English sentences using the Japanese words. Like the word average would have to be in English. Yeah. Okay. And the reason for that, by the way, it's very complex. The translation of a question into a query and a visualization response. And I guess at the end of the day, Microsoft would say, sometime in the future, we'll have all languages supported, but on a priority basis, English and Spanish. Okay. So how awesome would it be that you could deliver real-time dashboards, that you could embed reports, dashboards into your applications, and that you could extend Power BI with even your own developed visualizations? That, for example, an airline is one of my customers in Australia, and they have a very specific way that they want to visualize the data. That as the plane and the passenger numbers are filling up, the plane is like a thermometer. They want to see the color of the plane intensify as the number of passenger bookings have increased. All right, so as a developer, you can build your own visualizations over data. All right, so the Power BI overview. I've already given you a taste of what it is. From a marketing perspective, it's really a new generation of business intelligence. But, my career began down here as a technical BI person. What that means is that I would be engaged as a consultant with an IT group. I would have large projects to design, like data warehouses and cubes and reporting. And that is still valid to this day. Okay, that most large organizations have a project around data warehousing and the delivery of data in efficient ways for their decision makers. What's interesting to note about that is that it's impossible when you develop these corporate data warehouses to satisfy every question that the business will ask. Okay, and so generally what we do is we aim for the 80% rule that says, let's deliver 80% of the questions that would be asked. But that leaves 20% that isn't being addressed through corporate systems. And that's where we see the introduction of a second type of BI, which we refer to as self-service business intelligence. That rather than have the IT group produce everything, we push back to the business and we empower them with tools and permission to data, and we empower them with training. That's really important, by the way. And then if you give them this combination of things, they can produce their own solutions, and then they can answer their own questions based on their own data. All right, so that's been a natural evolution. And certainly Power BI covers that, but Power BI takes it to a step further, that there really should be no barriers. That if I'm, for example, a senior manager and I've just got a basic question, well, then I should be able to go to Power BI and ask that question and have my question translated into a visualization. All right, so it's like the final frontier. Power BI is sort of saying, okay, there are no limits now. Based on your needs and your skills, you should be able to achieve what you need to achieve. Again, that sounds like a marketing message, and I don't want it to sound that way. By the way, I don't work for Microsoft, but I do work very closely with them. All right, so I build a lot of technical content for them in terms of labs, and I present at their conferences, and I do all sorts of things. All right. What's that?
Thank you.
You are more than welcome, and I appreciate being an MVP for over 12 years now because of that, right? This is assuming that you want to allow everything. Well, the question here is, that's assuming that I want people to see the data. So, of course, we're in complete control at all times. Whether we just don't grant permission for people to access that dashboard or report, or we ensure that people only see the data they're allowed to see. That when Australian employees look at that dashboard, they only see Australian sales. But the same dashboard seen from a Japanese employee, they'll only see Japanese sales. So you're in control. And Power BI will enable all of those scenarios. Another question here.
I did not know about Power BI, but it looks like the Kibana dashboard. Are you familiar with Kibana?
Well, as a methodology.
I mean, in Kibana, I worked
with cards, right?
Yeah. Well, Kibana dashboard is similar thing. You can create analytics, visualization, all things from that.
Okay, so it's not attempting to be a substitute for that. You might be able to design a Power BI dashboard that behaves or expresses data in a very similar way, but it's not attempting to replace it. Okay, in simple terms, a dashboard is just a collection of tiles that visualize data. As to how you choose to lay that out is completely up to you. All right, so that's the intro to what Power BI is. When it comes to business intelligence, my career has been based on it. And, I could have been a developer, by the way, but I opted to be more data-centric in what I did. And the reason for that is that I'm a very creative person, and I'm a problem solver, which no doubt many of you are as well. But what I discovered early on is that solving problems that are data-related are the most interesting, for me anyway. And working in business intelligence is forever creative. I've got a pile of data over here, and I have a human here that has questions. How I produce the solution, there's a million ways you could do it. And often there's some good ways and bad ways, right? So that's what I built my career upon. So when it comes to the challenges that I solve in business intelligence, it's providing perspective across typically multiple systems. We have CRM systems, we have sales systems, we have general ledger systems. What you'll find is that as you move up the organizational chart, people at higher levels need their questions to span across systems. And that's one of the most challenging areas, is to make systems that were not designed to talk to each other actually relate, so that we can then meaningfully query the data simultaneously. All right, so BI is about integrating systems together. It's also about working with data no matter where it is. All right, so the challenges today might be that the data resides on your laptop, or it resides on a file share, or on a database server within your network. But more interestingly today, the data could be in the cloud. And if it's in the cloud, it could be software as a service. Your data is actually stored in somebody else's service. So the challenge is actually much more interesting these days, bringing on-prem, cloud, and hosted data together. And then the next challenge will be delivering the right data to the right people at the right time, which relates to your question about security. All right, so nothing has changed, except the cloud has introduced some interesting complexities. But Power BI has been designed as a service from the ground up to address these common challenges. All right, to be clear, Power BI is a cloud-based service, although you'll see there's an asterisk here. All right, so Power BI is also available as an on-premises service, the Power BI report server. All right, but tonight we're not talking about Power BI report server. I would classify your choice to use that because you're not ready to move to the cloud, or there are legal or governance obstacles that suggest you cannot move your data to the cloud. All right, if you're going to work with Power BI report server, fantastic, but most of what I talk about tonight is not applicable. As a cloud service, it opens up potential for embedding. It opens up the potential for real-time dashboards, and they're the topics I'll speak of tonight. All right, so this slide's a little bit busy, but I will just focus on the yellow rectangle. It doesn't matter where your data is coming from. Providing that Power BI as a cloud service can connect to it, and that means on-premises data is via a gateway for secure communication outside your firewall up to the service, or as a cloud service, it can connect to other cloud services. Now, what else can we talk about? Delivery of those dashboards and reports could be, of course, through any modern web browser. It could be through a mobile device, a tablet, even Apple phone has native apps. All right, so when it comes to the distribution of reports and dashboards, it's really straightforward and very secure. We've talked about dashboards, we've talked about reports, we're going to look at live dashboards tonight. We've also introduced natural language querying. Along the bottom is Power BI Desktop. So when it comes to producing your data solutions, often requiring you to model data, go and get that data from SQL Server and integrate it with Google Analytics. Power BI Desktop is the tool that will do that. So as a free application, you can download it, install it on Windows machines, and then you can go ahead and produce data models. You then publish them back to Power BI, and then you give consideration to how Power BI will keep the data current and up to date. And then upon it, you build reports and dashboards. Now, we're not going to focus on Power BI Desktop really at all tonight. That's a modeling tool. But what we will look at is the REST API, enabling you as developers to integrate Power BI capabilities into your applications, including the delivery of real-time dashboards. All right, so as an introduction, we'll suggest that Power BI is relevant to everybody. I think, again, this is like a marketing slide. So I'm not going to dwell on the business user, the analyst, or the professional, but I will dwell on the topic tonight, which is what does Power BI mean to developers? And this pretty much introduces the agenda for tonight's topic. The delivery of real-time dashboards. There are in fact 3 different approaches that you can employ. We'll take a look at custom visual development. There's also the ability to develop custom connectors that if you're working on perhaps a legacy or proprietary data formats, you can extend Power BI to work with your own data. And then lastly, perhaps the most important topic for developers is how you can embed Power BI content directly into your applications. Now, before we launch into it, a topic of licensing. So Power BI is for free. I could make that comment. Yes, Power BI is for free. But when it comes to doing anything like sharing content or embedding content, you're going to have to subscribe to Power BI and pay licensing. All right, so I'll just introduce that there is Power BI, which is a free license. There is the Power BI Pro, which current pricing is like $10 per person per month. Okay, so 120 US bucks a year gives you capability to publish content and also to share and be a recipient of that content. Now, I'll share with you, I find it remarkable that some of my customers that might need 5 of these licenses argue that it's too expensive. And I could suggest to them that, what's that, 600 American dollars a year, 1 or 2 really good decisions could easily pay for this. And I find it staggering that organizations today will bicker over having, their data available wherever they are, delivering up-to-date information, and $120 per user is too much. Very interesting to hear people justify that. Now, what will be relevant for us when we talk about embedding content is that there's the Power BI Premium license. All right, so I'll talk about it in a little more detail later, but when it comes to embedding, you probably need to work with the Premium. All right, there's also the equivalent of Premium in Azure. So you can spin up an Azure resource that provides you Power BI capabilities. More on that later. So all of those details are in the following slides. If you want to follow through, you can download the presentation. But with that introduction and overview, having set the scene that this is a data visualization service, providing a modern approach to connect to any data and deliver it to any device, are we now ready to talk about what developers might do? Are there any questions? All right, encourage those questions at any time. So the agenda for us then is this.
Before you jump in, can you tell something about data quality? Wanted to put it as a very hands-on. I think it was good.
That's a very general question. Data quality. You need to be a little more specific. What do you mean?
I think the prepare part you can do for the desktop is.
Let me tell this story.
You have different servers. One server can call, I don't know, like buy, sell. The other one will say 1, 2, and it's the same meaning. Yeah?
So
How do you?
So it's a little out of scope. So let me address it like this. Yes, of course, it's important. Garbage in is garbage out. And if you allow garbage data or garbage logic to enter your solution, then you can't expect the decisions that are being made off that to be good quality. All right, so Power BI Desktop would be the tool that we would focus on as allowing you not just to connect to data, but perform transformations over the data. Now, you can perform transformation for a number of reasons, but one good reason is data quality, that where we see that there are issues with the data, we cleanse it or convert it, transform it, integrate it, whatever is required. So Power BI Desktop would be the topic, and specifically within Power BI Desktop, the topic is Power Query, which is an amazing, amazing engine for connecting and transforming data and then loading it into Power BI, okay? So does that help you? Data quality is your responsibility. Power BI is not a magician that will detect problems and clean them up automatically, but it gives you very robust and comprehensive tools that you can address them yourself. Any other questions? All right, let's have a look. Developing with Power BI. We're going to look at the REST API, custom visuals. We'll talk briefly about custom connectors, and then we'll finish up with the embedding of Power BI content. Okay, so in summary, there are 5 opportunities for you guys as software developers to integrate, extend, and embed the Power BI experience. Let's start by talking about the Power BI REST API. So essentially, Power BI runs off your tenant. If you're familiar with Office 365 and the concept that your org has a tenant, Power BI resides within it. A tenant is the Power BI container. So authentication with Power BI is just done through Azure Active Directory. Therefore, programmatically, you can authenticate with Azure AD, and you may create applications that delegate Power BI service permissions. And therefore, your application can do things like this. We can enumerate content. What are the reports that we have here so that I can populate a drop-down list in my application? What are the data sets that we have? And maybe I need to programmatically trigger refresh to keep the data current. Question?
Do you have to use AD or can you roll your own solution?
You have to use Azure AD.
We have hundreds of clients, all have their own ADs.
So Power BI as a cloud service uses Azure AD for authentication. When it comes to your application layer, you can do whatever you want. And we'll talk about that with embedding, but Power BI service requires Azure AD authentication. Okay. Don't distract from your application development. That's a different layer.
No, I mean, as in the users who want to consume it are all going to be on different ADs. They didn't come to us.
Yes. Okay, so it's an application layer. In the same way that you might create your own authentication store for an application, you can leverage that. But ultimately, anything your application does with the Power BI service must authenticate with an Azure AD account. Okay, so with the REST API, there's a lot we can do as far as interrogate what is content, And a compelling story that demonstrates very well tonight is that we can deliver real-time dashboards programmatically by working with the REST API. So let's run with that story for now. You've already seen evidence of what a real-time dashboard can do. Like literally sub-second, you inserted a row or you submitted answers to your 5 questions, and those results ended up on a dashboard. All right, there's actually 3 different approaches that you can use to achieve that end. We have what we call push data sets, streaming data sets, and PubNub streaming data sets. Does anyone here work with PubNub? Okay, it's so basically a service that's really in support of IoT scenarios, that you might use them as a hub for all of your device inputs, and then Power BI can work with that, and basically real-time streaming from PubNub direct to Power BI. Tonight we'll look at the first 2 approaches. All right, so a little bit more theory as I build up this demonstration is that Power BI, I've already explained that it works within your organization's tenant. So if you're already working with Office 365 today, it's a no-brainer. Power BI is just an additional license that you'll give your Office 365 users. Now, within the tenant, we have containers that are named workspaces. And every user has what's known as a personal workspace. And it's possible that you can create what we call app workspaces as well. So within a workspace is where Power BI content resides. We see that we have data sets, and a data set really is just a representation of your data, although we could have a good 2-hour discussion about what a data set really means. For tonight, it's simply a source upon which visualizations can take place. Within data sets, we have 1 or more tables. Within tables, you have rows of data. All right. Power BI Desktop as that companion application can be responsible for creating those data sets, and they can be very complex, consisting of many tables, columns, calculations, relationships. It's a very, very interesting and yet can be very complex as well. So that's why specialists like me come in and typically solve more advanced problems. Nonetheless, a data set is at least 1 table and rows of data. With that theory behind us then, let's talk about the flow, about how we can work with the REST API. And the first thing we need to talk about is authentication. So switching to demo mode, what I'm going to do is launch the app registration tool. I don't know why this is so slow. There seems to be some DNS issue, either my laptop or this network. So while that's loading, help me out here. I need to get a bottle of this. This is slightly off topic for a moment. Does it say that it's available or discontinued over here? Anyone? Oh, there's 5 left. I've gone to about 5 stores, and my parents like this, and they make ice cream out of it. So they said, "You're going to Japan, you need to bring back a bottle of this," and I can't find it anywhere. Yeah, I don't think they're going to get delivered in time. If anyone knows a good liqueur shop in Tokyo that has lots of things, let me know before you go tonight, because I'm going to have disappointed parents when I go home. Okay. All right, so let's take a look at this. Register your application for Power BI. Now, what you could do is just go to the Azure portal and you could go ahead and create an application, or Power BI likes to make things easy for you. So they've gone and built up this app registration tool that just requires me to sign in. Well, that's pretty easy. And then it gives me a simple workflow by which I can create an application and delegate permissions that the Power BI service can work with. Okay, so we'll just sign in. And it says, "Welcome, Peter Myers," so it knows who I am. And then I click next. And it says, "All right, what's the name of your application?" I'm just going to call it demo. Is it server-side or native? I'll create a native application for this demo. And then we need to think about, well, what permissions does this app actually need? All right, so are we all familiar with the concept of a Azure AD app? You know when you install a new app on your phone, and the first time you launch it, it says, "Oh, I need to access your contacts. Do you approve this?" Okay, and hopefully you think carefully, because what you're allowing the application to do is to act on your behalf and do things with your resources. So you really need to trust the application. So the whole concept of an Azure AD app is that you delegate permissions to it, you use it as part of the authentication, and then assuming the user accepts it, the app can act within the permissions that are delegated to it. All right, so your application needs to have an Azure AD app. And so here we think, well, does it need to read the data sets? Does it need to enumerate the dashboards? Does it need to write back to them? Okay, in this demo, I'm just going to select all. But of course, in the real world, the principle of least privilege should say only delegate what is absolutely needed. All right, you'll see why in a minute. That's all that's required. And when I click register, it goes ahead and creates the application, and it generates a unique identifier. Okay, so that's going to form part of the authentication process. And we'll come back to that in a moment. There you go. That's the first step in authentication. Once we achieve authentication, Azure AD gives us a token. And that token is valid for up to 90 days, and it should accompany every request that is sent to the Power BI service. And let's just take a look at some common operations that you might perform with the REST API, like enumerating objects. What are the data sets that are available in the workspace? You can even programmatically create a data set, and I'll demo this in a minute. What are the tables? Change the schema of a table. And now we get interesting. A post request to add rows to a table. We can push rows programmatically into a data set, which is precisely what happened. When you completed your survey and hit submit, the web server just pushed a row into a table. There's all sorts of other things we can do, but relevant for tonight, we can push rows of data programmatically into the service. All right, so by example, here is a request to the service. And so notice here that we've got the token in the header. And basically we're saying, tell us what data sets are available. Now the response would come back, JSON document, and you can see that there's an array of data sets. And Power BI content, uniquely stored with an ID and a friendly name. So you might use this as a drop-down list in your application. Adding a row to a table. So here is the post request. And what I'll point out here is that the data set unique identifier is here. Within its tables, there's a product table, and we're pushing into the rows of that table. The body of this request is really just an array of rows, of which you see column name value pairs. All right, so from a development point of view, it's really quite straightforward to construct a push into a table. All right, so let's see how it all comes together. So this demo is going to use this application ID. Let me copy it to the clipboard. And what I developed for demonstration and educational purposes is this very simple, forms application that allows exploring how the REST API could work. So let me just launch it. So just bear in mind, it's not what you would deliver to your end users. It's more of a demonstration tool. So I'm just going to run it. And then we'll explore how I can build up a real-time dashboard by using this app.
How much can you push? Like 10,000 rows?
Funny you should say that. In a single push, 10,000 rows max per single push. There are a number of constraints, and I'll come to it shortly. All right. So this application, the first thing I'm going to do is open up the options, and I'm going to paste in that application ID. Now, in the real world, you would not expose this to an end user. This is your config file. All right. So you'll see that the 3 disabled are basically endpoints to the service itself. You have to hard code them somewhere. And so there we've done it. It wants to know what the redirect URI is. Where's my redirect URI? You can retrieve your client ID from the Azure portal. They've recently, and I mean very recently, updated this tool. And the stupid thing about it is I need to know what the redirect URI is, and they don't show it to me. So we'll have to go to Azure Portal and look it up.
Can you ask questions?
Yes, now is an excellent time. Yes.
No. Can you ask the question to the Power BI?
Well, I could try, but I don't like my chances of success because those questions are answered from your data, not from your Azure Active Directory, right? Okay, so let me just come in here and...
What is my password?
All right, so what do we got? Azure AD is here. No, I don't want a tour. And...
Welcome to Azure. You are especially slow doing that.
Yeah, it's not Azure. There's some DNS issue. I've been feeling it all day. I don't know. It might be. Okay. Well, I have feedback to the people that developed this. Really? Okay. Thank you. And then I'll come to app registrations here. Yes. Yes. And then we should see that there's one for demo. View all applications. There it is here. And the part that it doesn't let me see is the redirect URI. There it is there. So I don't know why it doesn't give that to me, or it doesn't let me input it. But anyway, I can then come back to my app and make sure that it's being used. All right. So now it has everything ready to perform authentication. The config file is updated, and then I perform a connect. So this is where your application challenges the user, like, who are you? Sign in with your org account. Eventually.
The redirect URI for native application should be stable all the time.
It's actually not. It's not needed, but the authentication process wants it, but it's not actually used.
But there is time automatically it should be the same.
I'm not sure on that one. On Microsoft.com. All right, so I sign in. So just imagine you're signing in at this point, and then watch what happens here. Assuming authentication succeeds, it says, by the way, the application that you're using has these permissions. If you agree to this, it will act as you and it will do things. You know? So in Melbourne, we have a great tram network, and I installed a tram tracker application, which is great, real-time tram arrivals, and it says it wants to access my photos. You know, and at that point, it's really annoying because you want the application, but why would it ever need to access my photographs? It's unbelievable. You really got to pay attention. So I can come in here and say, don't bother anybody ever again. We will globally trust it. Now, the thing to watch is this. In fact, what I'll do, make things a little bit easier, I'm going to turn on Zoom it. All right, because what the applications come back and told me is that authentication succeeded and a token has been cached. And therefore, for every request that is made to the service now, it can send that. All right, so I'm going to use this Explorer on the left-hand side. All of the things that I'm doing are using REST API calls. I'm not going to focus on them. It's giving me feedback here, but it's allowing me to determine what are the workspaces that I have permission to look at. And it comes back and it says, yes, there's one called Tokyo.net user group, which happens to be the workspace right here. Okay, so when I had that real-time dashboard, it's inside a workspace called Tokyo.net user group. All right, so inside that workspace, what are the data sets? Go and tell me what data sets exist. And we see that there's one named survey. Within survey, we can then go and get the tables to see that there's a table named survey. All right, so that's just showing us what we can already see here. But what I'm going to do is create a new data set. And all we need to do is send a JSON document that describes the data set in terms of tables, columns, data types, but it could also describe relationships, calculations, whatever it takes. All right, so in this demo, I'm going to keep it reasonably simple. And that is that I have a JSON document that says this. Let's create a data set named e-commerce that will have a table named browsing, and that table will have 4 columns. Timestamp, product, category, country. Copy it, paste it into here, and then the next consideration will be retention of data. Okay, so there are limits as to what you can do. And if you don't specify a retention policy, the moment that the table has 5 million rows, you'll receive errors attempting to push more rows in. The only thing you could do at that stage would be to clear all data. Or, as I'll do now, if you choose basic FIFO, it will keep a rolling 200,000. As you keep pushing, it'll just get rid of older data and you will never, ever receive an error that you run out of room. Okay, now watch what happens when I click OK. 5 million. And I'll come for one table. I have a slide on this. So for the moment, now is the time to think about it. And you probably want basic FIFO. Okay. All right, so when I click OK, watch what happens. Looking over here in my navigation pane, we should see the creation of that data set shows up also in the Power BI service and its portal. Excuse the slowness. It usually is sub-second, but there it is. We've now created a data set inside Power BI named e-commerce that has a table. All right, so what I could then move on to do is to just click that data set, which tells the Power BI service that you want to build a report based on it. And here in the fields pane, you can see that I have a table named browsing that has those 4 fields. So let me build up a visualization like this. Let's build a visualization that is a card that would show the count of products. So this would tell me, basically how many rows have been inserted. Now, of course, that's an empty table, so we're just getting a blank at this stage. And then I'll bring in another one that is category. Let's make this into a bar chart. And then I'll bring in count of product as well. So it's a pretty simple visualization. It's not stunning at this stage, but I will go ahead and save this as my e-commerce report. To build a dashboard, you typically build reports and pin the visuals up to the dashboard. So now what I can do is just pin this. This card here will be pinned to a new dashboard named e-commerce. And you'll see the addition of a new dashboard over here. And then I'll pin the second visual as well. And voila, I now have a dashboard. And it's based on a data set that we refer to as a push data set. It's been designed for programmatic pushing of data. So let's see how that works with this application. I can now get the tables of my e-commerce data set, and then I can perform a table operation by pushing rows to it. Excuse the slowness. It should be instantaneous. There we go. So let me go ahead and push a JSON document, and this is what it looks like to push a row of data. I'm going to push a single row with those values for 3 of the columns. Watch what happens. That's essentially what was going on. So, think about the applications that you developed today. That with relative ease, you could inject additional logic that says that when they add the new student in the enrollment system, go and push a row to a table so that we can have people monitor what's going on with student enrollments. All right, the other thing we might do is at table level, you can clear all rows. All right, so if that table did fill up, you can programmatically remove everything. Now, of course, to produce a streaming solution, it's just a matter of constantly pushing data to it. So what this application allows you to do is just load some data, from a CSV file. So this is for so I've got some browsing events here. And all it does is cache some data, allowing for the simulation of sending rows, like randomly between 10 and 20 with 0-second delay. And then it says, is there a column where you want the current date time to be pushed? Go ahead and do that. And there it is pushing random rows to sort of simulate, what the sales activity on your e-commerce website might be doing. So it's a relatively straightforward thing as developers to do this. And then we could even use Q&A over this. It's a push data set, but I can ask a question like this. Count browsing by timestamp. I'm just going to paste it in. Go and show me the last 120 seconds of what's been going on as a line chart.
Calculate to push the button or after the wait time?
This wait time here?
20 seconds, does it include the wait time?
It's a rolling 120 seconds. But no, there's obviously something wrong with my computer. But it should just happen. So I apologize, it just doesn't look as good, does it? When I talk about real-time dashboards, I expect it to be real-time. But I can see up here that it's still thinking about it. Let's just give it a moment and see what happens.
Fortunately, they're software developers, they're not executives.
At this table, you look like you're executives.
You're not, but I am.
All right, well, we'll come back to this. Okay, but that gives you an end-to-end demo on how you might deliver a real-time dashboard, the creation of a data set, the ability to push rows to a table within that data set, and programmatically, if you want, you can clear rows out of the table. Let's have a quick sneak look. Nope, okay. Restrictions, yes, this came up. I doubt that you're going to have an issue with 75 columns in a table or more than 75 tables in a data set, but the 5 million rows could be a limit that you might encounter. Therefore, the basic FIFO retention policy can work around this, just allowing you to retain the last 200,000. In a single push, the most you can send is 10,000 rows. Maximum rows per hour is 1 million per data set, although there is massive throttling that kicks in. The moment that your table has more than 250,000 rows, a massive reduction of 2 rows a second is the best that you can push at that stage.
2 rows a second?
Yep. Yeah, so the moment you have 250,000 rows, and here's the issue, is that in the Power BI service, you're working in shared capacities. And Microsoft deliberately throttled things so that you don't steal resources from other customers that are sharing those capacities. That's why the limits are on place. Okay. All right, there are some other limits, but they're really not relevant for what we're here to discuss tonight. There we go. That's it, real time. I'm going to pin this back to the dashboard. And then we should see that we've also got, there's the last 120 seconds of sales activity. Okay. By the way, everything that I've done here so far doesn't require any expense. I can do this on a free Power BI license. Okay, although the problem would be if I want to share this dashboard with other people, then they're going to have a pro license, $10 per month. But one of the first projects that I did real time was with a large financial group in Europe, and they were stock traders. 20 million transactions, is it a minute or an hour? I can't remember, but either way, we ended up producing, real-time dashboards that just cost $10 per user per month to access them. We sat there and we had lunch in a beautiful seafood restaurant, and we just had the Power BI app in the middle of the table. and there were real-time updates per second showing what their stock trading was doing. I mean, it's amazing, $10 per user per month. All right. So that's the story of real-time dashboards with the REST API. What do you think? I think it's an awesome story. When it comes to Azure, if you want to work in an IoT scenario, you've got Azure Stream Analytics, you've got Event Hubs and Service Bus. So is anyone working with these services today? Awesome. Okay. So you work with Stream Analytics? So Stream Analytics is essentially a service that can take inputs from event hubs, which basically are ingesting device information. And what you can do is output the result of queries over those event streams. All right, so there's basically a query here that says, and in fact, that's your survey. I cheated. When you submitted your survey, I just used Stream Analytics because it's easier. But the query typically use a function like tumbling window. Go and accumulate all of the events for the past 10 seconds, produce an aggregate result, and output it somewhere. And when you look at the outputs, Power BI is one of the supported output types, as is Azure SQL Database, as is blob storage, as is Cosmos DB. All right, so as a service, it's very simple. If you're using it already, is you can just push a stream. And what Azure is doing for you, it's using the same REST API. It's just pushing rows, exactly what we did programmatically, Azure Stream Analytics does, but it just pushes the output of a query. All right, so that's cool to know. One interesting story about that is that Azure Machine Learning can integrate with Azure Stream Analytics, so you can have real-time predictions. Stream Analytics can call machine learning functions, and the output of those functions can be sent straight to a dashboard, and then the dashboard can also be configured to alert you. Your Apple Watch could tell you right now that a piece of equipment is likely to go offline. So let's be proactive about it, fix it before it actually pulls production offline. That's the type of scenario that you could work with Power BI. Now, I do want to talk about a second approach to streaming. By the way, what is my time limit tonight? 9 o'clock? 9:30? 9. 25 more minutes? Ooh. Here's another approach to building real-time dashboards. It's very, very cool. So when building up a dashboard with tiles, there's this special type of tile called a streaming tile. Okay, so let me go ahead and create one of these. In fact, it says to me, if you're going to add a streaming tile, you need a streaming data set, of which the survey data set is one, but let me create a new one using the API. But the Power BI service gives me an interface by which I can create the data set. So this one is going to be called temperature, and it's going to have 2 fields. So note that I don't have to programmatically create this. I'm going to create a timestamp field, and I'm going to create a temperature field, which is a number. Now, I'll call out here that streaming data sets can also have historic data. What that means is that it can be a streaming data set and a push data set at the same time. My previous demonstration was a push data set. Let me come back to the importance of that in a minute. I'm not going to turn that feature on. I go ahead and create the data set. You'll see over here, I have a new data set added into the workspace. And then it says to me that if you were going to use PowerShell, there is the code that could push for you. Okay, well, let's take that code. Yuck. They really don't want to make that easy. And then I've just lost it. Okay, well, then I'd come back to my workspace. I would come to my data sets. I'd see that I have a temperature data set here, and notice the type of data set is described to me here. So this is a streaming data set, and then I can click on the info here, and then I'm back. Copy that to the clipboard, and then we'll put this into PowerShell. Now, the cool thing about using the streaming data set with this approach is that you don't have to concern yourself with authentication with Azure AD, because look at this. what we have up here at line number 1 is a variable named endpoint that basically is pointing to your data set by its unique ID. And what follows here is an authentication key. So encapsulated within the URL is the authentication as well. You'd want to be very careful, obviously, not to give that out. So we then just produce another variable here, which is the JSON document. You'll see there we've got timestamp equals value, temperature equals something, and then we just invoke the REST method and pass that in. All right, so let's do something like this. Temperature in centigrade, 23.2. Before I run that, let me return to my dashboard and add a streaming tile. The streaming tile will be based on the temperature data set, and I want to show it as a card. Just show me the temperature in a card. All right, you can identify streaming tiles because they're like the Harry Potter tiles. All right, the lightning strike tells you that it's a tile based on a streaming data set. And now if I return to the PowerShell here, that really should just happen like that. But it's taking time to resolve. There we go. There is the value of 23 degrees. Now, it's very simple if you know PowerShell, and who does here tonight? A handful of you. So if I just adapt this really quickly, let's just build an infinite loop here. So continue doing this infinitely. We'll put a start sleep in here, and we'll just tell it to delay 2 seconds before you loop again. We could be looking up something from a database, invoke SQL command, whatever. But here I'm going to change the payload such that the timestamp is just equal to get date and format it as universal. I think you. And then the temperature, let's just make something a little more interesting. Let's just some random data. But assume that you're reading this from some source. With a minimum value of 18.1 and a maximum value of, I don't know, 23.6. 2 second delay, 2 second delay, and so on. And then what I could do is just add another type of streaming tile that shows it as a line. Now, the issue with streaming tiles, however, is you're restricted to visualizations that are very simplistic. You can't use all of the beautiful Power BI visuals. You're locked into these 5. So if I show this as a line chart, and on the axes I put my timestamp value, and then the value would be the temperature, and then I just show the last, I don't know, 1 minute is fine. But look at this, the maximum a streaming data set will let you work with is 60 minutes. So there are other restrictions with streaming data sets. But an advantage of them is very simplistic programming to achieve them. And if you notice this, it's actually a lot more fluid, whereas this is jerky and jumpy. A push data set characteristically is very different from a streaming data set. So in fact, what I'll do is just stop this and get rid of this, run this again. And you'll see that there's sort of this quite smooth streaming that can be achieved with these Harry Potter tiles. No? There we go. How easy is that? If you use the invoke SQL command in PowerShell, you could just be querying your database, bring back some values, keep pushing them. Again, you can do that at no cost. To do all of this costs you nothing. The issue would be if you want to share it. All right, if I took this dashboard and said, share this with my manager, there's my manager's email address, bang. Providing that he had a pro license at $10 a month, he could be monitoring on his phone, on his tablet, on his desktop, that real-time dashboard. Any questions? It's an awesome topic. It's a great win with some of your legacy applications to be able just to start pushing rows into a data set and then, just have this dashboard sitting somewhere in the background, taking your application to a new level. Question in the back. So can Power BI pull data? No. So what it can do is it can refresh data based on your Power Query logic, but the development story tonight is really a push and a stream. So therefore, your logic is responsible to connect and retrieve the data and then push it to the service. Okay, for real-time delivery, that's how it works. For standard business intelligence, we can use scheduled refresh to pull from data stores, like on a scheduled hourly basis, for example. Another question.
Can you drill through to the tabular data?
Can you drill through? You can achieve drill through to the data that is being loaded into Power BI. According to the granularity of data you load, yes, you can drill in. Awesome. Well, let's switch gears. The ability to produce custom visualizations over data is the next topic for developers. And this should appeal to developers that have got strong web graphics skills. If you work with D3 or other web graphics libraries, then basically you've got a framework that enables you to build up a custom visual. You don't have to concern yourself about how to query the data. The framework will look after that. Your concern is, how do I make it look good and provide the custom capabilities that my report designers want? Now, as one example, this fish one here, I think not a lot of real world applicability, but it demos pretty well. In fact, so if I come to the survey report here, I might decide that, this is a really boring way to show the role. Okay, let me go ahead and edit the report. Instead of using, the boring stock visualizations, we've got this option right here that says, get a custom visual. All right. And the option that I'll choose right now is just take me to the marketplace and let me choose from custom visuals that either Microsoft have developed or third-party visuals that are available for me to access. Again, apologies for the slow response. I had a look at that before and it looked right. I'm not sure what it is, but in my hotel, I've been having a similar issue. So it might be just a Japanese thing. I don't know. It eventually responds. So I've decided, I'm only here for 2 more days, so I'm not going to play around with my laptop. This one is called the Enlighten Aquarium. So if I just search on aquarium, we go, there it is. All right. But there's a growing number of awesome visuals out there. Okay. So the topic now isn't so much to show how you can use a custom visual, because that's not really developer focused, is it? But just to show you how it works, what I can now do is say, well, that role should now be, and I'm just waiting for it to load. There it is. Let's express that as an Enlighten Aquarium. Okay, so how awesome is that? If I just focus in on that visual, we get to see, the big fish here is the 10 software developers, whereas the smaller little fish over here is the database developer. Okay, so if you're running a fish restaurant, then yeah, maybe this is an awesome way to visualize your data. Now, the other thing about visualizing data is you can determine how users can customize your data. For example, I don't want them to see fish. I want them to see sharks. All right, so it's up to you. Your creativity is really confined to what you can do with HTML, SVG, D3, and you name it. Okay, so if I had more time, I'd go through the basics of this, but essentially it's a matter of installing the Power BI Visuals library, which takes about, 50 seconds if you have a good DNS. And then there's an entire framework that allows you to work through packaging up basically what becomes a PBI viz file, which is what we import into Power BI. And then you can use it to visualize your data. All right, so just like the native visuals, you can develop your own. And the lifecycle works like this. You create code, you even test it via the Power BI service. So you basically expose your laptop as a service that Power BI uses to test your visual in the cloud. All right. So all of this is done through the custom visual tool, free framework to download. What you develop is versioned because Power BI is evolving at a rapid rate, but it gives you confidence that when Power BI, updates its service, which it updates every week, by the way, that your versioned visual will continue to work. Testing is done through the Power BI service itself. All right, and you're not limited to Windows. You could develop this in Windows, Linux, or Mac OS. All right, so for those that are so inclined, I've got a great URL to a lab that I wrote for Microsoft. It's not for the faint-hearted. It looks like it's fun and easy, but it's actually one of the most challenging things to do, is to build a robust visualization. But there is a growing demand out there, by the way. If you have these skills and you're creative, is that customers are looking for their own custom visuals and they don't have the expertise in-house. So I'm aware of several individuals that are just freelancing on the side. They produce custom visuals, hand them off, and bill on a visual by visual basis. All right, so I won't go through developing them tonight, but if you're keen, I'll give you a link on how you can do it yourself. The story about connectors I won't go through as well, but there is a framework to allow you to wrap up your own custom data stores so that Power BI can effectively query them. All right. The main topic then that we finish on, and it is the big topic for developers, is that these amazing interactive reports and these dashboards can be embedded directly into your own web apps. All right, so this is where there are two APIs. The Power BI REST API is going to be useful. And there's also the client-side JavaScript API that has some pretty cool capabilities. So all of these things in Power BI can be embedded directly into your app, whether it's a report or a specific visual in a report or a dashboard or a specific tile from a dashboard, or even that Q&A experience could be in your app. And that, if they've got a question about the data, you don't have to write elaborate code. You just embed the Q&A over a data set that you've published to Power BI. All right, you will need to authenticate with the Power BI service. Now, to be clear and upfront, there are two very different stories for embedding Power BI content. When you think about the user of your application, if that user is one of your organization accounts, so it's an internal application, then it's what we call SaaS embedding. It's software as a service, okay? So there's not a lot of special things you need to do there. There's no licensing requirement because you're embedding content that they're allowed to access anyway. They could go to powerbi.com, they could sign in, the content's there. You might choose to embed that into your own application. That's what we call software as a service embed. It's not the interesting story, because the most common story is this. You've got an application, you have your own authentication store. They're not org accounts within your organization, and you want them to have access to Power BI content. Okay, so that's what we call platform as a service, or PaaS embedding. Now, at that point, Microsoft want you to pay. All right, you'll need to have the right licensing in place, whether it's a premium Power BI license or you're going to work with Azure with a Power BI embedded resource. Okay, so let's focus on PaaS embedding. All right, which is what we refer to as an external app. Your app continues to do what it does. It authenticates them in whatever way makes sense to your app. But at some point in time, when you want to embed Power BI content, you will need to authenticate with the Power BI service. So we have what's known as a master app account. It's like a service account, right? You create an org account, you delegate it permissions in Power BI, and your application will authenticate with the service via that app. But as a developer, you can do things like pass details about who your application user is. The user is Fred. Fred comes from Melbourne, and Melbourne people can only see Australian sales. So you can pass through information that tells Power BI how to effectively secure data. And yet the same application might have Jerry from Tokyo, and the same report embedded would show only Japanese data. Okay, so you've got that complete control. All right, so the demo that I'll wrap up with is to use the fast track approach with a Power BI onboarding tool. Again, apologies for the slowness here. This is just a great demo and a good way perhaps to do your very first embed. All right. And it's basically a wizard-driven experience. And I'll guide you through it now and show you the result and leave you with the potential of what it might mean to your application. All right, here we are at the very beginning of the tool that says, well, you need to make an upfront decision. Are you embedding for your customers or are you embedding for your organization? Which one's PaaS, which one's SaaS embedding? Embed for your customers? PaaS, platform as a service, the most common scenario. So let's take that path. And then it just presents a workflow. All right, sign in to Power BI. All right, well, what I'm going to do for this demo, I'm just going to use a whole new account. Now, when you embed and do PaaS embedding, you have to generate embed tokens. And that's where the licensing comes in. To generate an embed token, you need to pay the right license for it. But Microsoft are generous because they want you to evaluate and trial it. So there are a limited number of free embed tokens. So what I'm demonstrating now is what you might do with your own org account today. All right, so I'm just going to sign in. You could just sign in with your org account using this tool. This account has never been used before, so I think it's going to force me to change the password. Having authenticated, it then says, welcome. You can now proceed. Now, you have to have a pro account to do this. And again, Microsoft are generous. They will give you a 60-day pro trial so that you can work with those features. And I accept that trial. So now I can move on to the next step, which says you need an application in your Azure Active Directory. Okay, well, let's go ahead and call this demo embed. And we had this conversation before, but let's go ahead and delegate all privileges. Because by the way, another capability that you can have when embedding reports is you can let users create or edit the reports inside your application as well. So here is where you determine what behaviors we want to support.
Sorry, these privileges are app getting privileges on your phone. If you have application on your phone, is that what it is?
No, they're not applications on your phone. They're privileges for what the service can do.
Cool.
Have a look at them here. Will the application be allowed to enumerate certain objects? Will it be allowed to create?
This is stored in a database.
No, no. So to be absolutely clear, the 5 things that I said you can embed are reports, report visuals, dashboards, dashboard tiles, and Q&A. So all of the permissions are around those. Okay. The data in a database, no, there's no such way that Power BI can allow connection to it. It's Power BI content is what you're delegating privileges for. So the question that I'd ask myself at this stage is that when I'm embedding Power BI content into my app, what do I need to do with it? Do I need to allow users to create new reports? If not, then I would probably say, turn this one off. Okay, or no, sorry, this one here, create content, no. All right, and what you're guaranteeing is that if this application is used to authenticate, it will have no such rights on the Power BI service to do that. So you're constraining the capabilities. All right. So at step 2, I simply register, and you'll see here, there we go. The Azure AD app has been created for me automatically. Now, the next thing that you need for embedding is that there must be an app workspace. You cannot embed content that belongs in your personal workspace. So I'll go ahead and create a workspace here called Demo Embed. And that meets the next requirement. And then right here, you're going to see it. The ID for that workspace is now available here. Now, the next thing you'll want is some content to embed. Now, you can upload your own Power BI desktop file, but Microsoft make it really easy for you. Just go and import a sample so that I've got something. And so it uploads a Power BI desktop file that consists of a model and a report. And then the very last step says, remember when I granted permissions? Because this is embedded in your app, you cannot expose that. So you must grant those permissions in advance. And here you are, saying that when it's used for an embedding scenario, I'm now going to okay the delegation of those permissions. And there you have it. In 5 steps, you've set up all of the Power BI, and the licensing and permissions are in place as well. This is really frustrating, isn't it?
Sorry, again, for the granting permission.
Yeah.
Is it from the server to the app or from app to the server?
So when authentication takes place, your app needs to authenticate with the Power BI service. It does it via an app that has delegated permissions. So it's at that point in time. It's nothing to do with your app authenticating your own users. It's your app authenticating with the service.
You give the app permission to the service. Or you give permission service to the app.
What your app needs is an authentication token from Azure AD. That,
You give app the permission to access the...
yeah, the app is constraining what that token can be used for. In the same way that I don't want you accessing my photographs. You can authenticate as me, but you cannot do this.
My question is, are you protecting the service, the app, or the user? What are you shooting for?
You're protecting the assets, the Power BI assets.
The Power BI.
Well, and it could be protecting the user as well. It depends on what the app is doing. But in this case, we're not accessing the user's file content. We're accessing the service. So we're protecting the service. Okay. There you go. The onboarding tool. It allows you an easy setup. Where I finish this demo is you can then download the sample application. So the cool thing about this is there's already a starting point. All right, whether it's a PAS embed or a SAS embed, that what Microsoft are giving you is a pre-built solution that has all the code in it as well. So let's see how this works. And then we can wrap this up. All right, so in my downloads, it just downloaded this. And I will unzip this to my D drive. And it's just a .NET web application. There it is. Now, you can spend as much time as you like reverse engineering it, but they've done a terrific job because the only thing that you need to do is open up the web.config. And all of those IDs have been inserted for you. There's one thing that it didn't insert. What would that be? Basically, what is your password? It won't put that in clear text, obviously. But what you see here is the application ID, the workspace ID, the report ID. There's the username that I inserted. It's all been set up for you. So all I need to do is put that password in. And I think I modified it. So I'll 65. And then all I need to do is run it. How about we run this in, we'll just run it in Edge. Okay, and that's it. You'll see the embedding of a report. Now, while that's loading, because I know it'll take a little bit of time, I'll wrap up quickly by then talking about what you can do client-side. So this is where it gets really interesting, is there's a very rich client-side API that enables you to programmatically work with embedded content. So programmatically, you can do things like set filters, change pages. You can respond to events that when a user clicks on a pie chart, the application can be told what they clicked on, and therefore your application can respond in a meaningful way. You can switch from edit mode to view mode. You can create new reports. So the API allows doing lots of things to integrate the experience into the application. All right, so I'll quickly show you how that works. Let's just see if this is running yet. This is super annoying. It's just very slow. So while that's still loading, there it is. That's how the embedding works. an embed's only going to be as good as the quality reports and data you have, by the way. So the conversation is that you've got someone developing the reports or the data sets. Your job as a developer is just to integrate and to programmatically ensure that the data is delivered correctly. All right, so that's really annoying. Let me just do a quick search on Power BI Playground. There we go. So this report, when I just click on their main page and I say, okay, go and take me to the embed report page. Super annoying. While that's loading, I'll come back here and I'll open up the playground. Boy. I really don't know what it is, to be honest. It'll load in a second. So basically, from a web development point of view, it's an iframe on the page. You have the JavaScript API is doing a client-side request. Server-side, you're generating an embed token, you're passing it client-side. Client-side, it injects content into an iframe. So it's actually a very straightforward thing to do. It's a framework. You just need to get the right iframe in place, the right server-side code to authenticate, generate the tokens, pass them client-side, and then you can embed here. This application also allows you to work with different security. What if I put Fred's account in there? What if it was Mary's? And you can also test that the security is working as you'd expect it to. And then you see the embedding of a report, which is completely interactive, embedded within your application. Ta-da. I think I'm going to run out of time. So, just briefly, from a licensing point of view, if you're going to do PaaS embedding, the two approaches are Power BI Premium licensing, which is a tenant level license, minimum $5,000 a month. Okay, but it provides also advanced capabilities, working with large data sets, working with incremental refresh strategy. So it's where Microsoft's new story about BI and enterprise BI is taking place. Premium license. One capability of Premium is that you can embed PaaS embed. Otherwise, you can buy an Azure Power BI embedded resource. Okay. So if you download this slide deck, this is where it sort of explains to you. For Power BI Premium, there are two different SKU families for Azure and what you can or can't do. But PaaS embedding can be achieved with all three of them. It just depends on what you're ultimately wanting to do. Okay, so I'll let you follow through with that. It just takes a little while to research and arrive at what would make most sense to you. Okay, so I'll wrap up with a conclusion and then I'll welcome any final questions. But hopefully tonight, I think 6 people said that they'd never really heard of Power BI before. The takeaway is that it's a cloud data visualization service, new generation BI. It is a market leader, by the way, if you're familiar with the competes, Tableau. Still a strong product, but according to Gartner, in vision and ability to execute, Microsoft are rocketing ahead. The service goes through weekly updates and Power BI Desktop goes through monthly updates. And as a professional, I can't even keep pace with it. So it's something to keep an eye on. It will no doubt be the dominant data service available. So what you can do as a developer is embed content. That is the strongest story. The real-time dashboards is fun, but it's actually a minor story for developers. For those that are creative and love working with web drawing, and you've got the custom visualization story as well. So I'll just wrap up by saying that if you download this presentation, lots of useful URLs are all in here. samples, well designed, allow you to kickstart and become quickly familiar. And then common questions about licensing are addressed through these slides. Custom visuals addressed here. If you're looking for training in Power BI, because we didn't talk about how to produce the solutions, we talked about what developers might do with existing solutions. There's a lot of free content that you can then use to get up to speed on Power BI. While I won't treat this as a marketing activity, that's what my company does. I teach people on how to work with Power BI, whether as a consumer of data, whether you're working with the service as a business user, or whether you have to produce models and reports as a business analyst, or as a software developer, you need to work with the capabilities that we discussed today. If you're interested in any training, feel free to reach out to me. Otherwise, that's my last slide for the night. I'll make the URL available that you can email that to your group.
Yep.
But otherwise, if you'd like to download the PDF with all of those links and details, that's the slide that will help you. All right, well, at this stage, I'll welcome any other questions, but let me just call it a quits for the night, let people get out of here if they want. So thanks for your time, interest, and attendance. And if you have any further questions, come see me up front. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any questions? Any questions? Nothing? Really? Are you sure?
Stunned silence.
Yeah.
Are there books or how to start with this?
Well, that's where I mentioned some free training resources. So the online videos is a great way to start. Otherwise, you know, books, this is the challenge. A lot of authors are not happy writing books on something that's constantly changing because it gets out of date very quickly. All right, so you'll find that there's a growing lot of YouTube videos. All right, find the personality that talks to you best and follow their videos. Yeah, probably Pluralsight's one of the online training groups. Awesome.
All right, any other question? Check. Yeah, any other question? Nothing? All right, so if you're interested in the Power BI, the custom visual, and if you're interested in reading Japanese, actually I have Japanese content for the Power BI custom visual. I know. It's the easiest way to make it happen. Sorry. All right, if you're interested in the custom visual, and if you want to study Japanese, you can read my blog about the custom visual, the development. So I have a bunch of information about how you can do the custom visual development. And another thing is if you're interested in Power BI, it's not shared. No video. No video, okay. Just audio, so let me share. How about now? Yep, that should be fine. All right, so if you're interested in the Power BI custom visual, I have a blog about 15-20 blogs article about how to do the custom visual. And if you're interested in the PowerShell, actually the Microsoft product team releasing the PowerShell for Power BI, and I'm heavily contributed. And I also welcome you guys to be the contributor because we are writing the PowerShell by using C#. Yes. And by writing the PowerShell module, you are very well known for the Power BI group. All right, so that's it for today, and thanks for coming. And the next time should be the next year, January, and when the third Tuesday, January 15th, 15th. So 15th, or maybe the week later. I will post the next schedule. But anyway, thanks for coming, and hope you can have a happy holidays and a happy New Year. Thank you. And we need to have a picture. Yeah, let's stop the sharing now. Goodbye, YouTube. Right, and could you come in front, people? And I need to take a picture to prove we are doing this for good.
Forget to remove the password.
Yeah. It doesn't matter. It should expire in a week. Let's do the other side. So could you stand the other side of the screen where we don't have much the light? Yeah. That side, that side.
Watching, it does that. So
the other side. And actually, the base Meetup logo with the password. And let me take a picture from the side of that. And I need some volunteer to take a picture of mine. You don't mind? All right, smile, Bobby, eye. No? Yeah. Somebody? Okay. And I will begin. Yeah. Is it? All right, thank you.
Yes. IoT device currently in data.
yes.
Have to pre-process it. Then it's stored in SQL Server. At which point we apply permissioning to it. The different users can see different sets of data. Some people might see the same data. Some people. And it's just look like that. We'd have to do publishing of the data, but we don't want to publish.
Do you have any experience on OCR?
Set organization.
So the big story
Yeah,
that
already
we're not
service,
tonight
yes.
is how you produce a data model.
We are currently
data
looking
model,
into some OCR
can
tools
either
which
connect
can
the data and
scan our
import,
documents in our organization.
or it can do a
Currently,
process.
it's manually
The
done.
Power BI
Right, so we have the custom, the
that model
cognitive
can have
service.
role security.
Cognitive services.
According to
Service
the
Azure. If you go to
Is
cognitive
it,
service page,
is it good? Like, does it process
But if your
our
data's in SQL
Japanese
Server,
driving lessons and all?
It's
Well,
the number one data source. for health
depends.
data, all right? So it's just a
But you
matter
can
of building
try.
the right
it
model.
depends on the document
And
quality
then
also,
publishing
right?
it to the service,
So if you go
reports
to
on top
Vision,
of it, and then sharing
and
those
in the
reports.
Vision, if you go to computer vision,
That would be the flow.
we have OCR. And in this demo, we only demoing the English, but we also have the Japanese.
Probably
Right,
not
Yeah,
a
yeah,
developer
yeah.
topic, it's a data
This looks
topic.
well with the good images,
So,
but we have some
so just start
But
with
if
scan
you-
copy.
Right, but if you have the,
Work through the modeling
yeah,
basics.
this also related to scan copy
and
as
then
well.
learn about
So
programming.
try the cognitive service. That's the easiest way, I guess.
Mhm.
And if you're only reading the driver's
Your data-
license anyway,
Your data
you may want to
data
tweak
in
the
database that
application to make
Power
the
BI can
the
load
picture
and you
The
can
align,
measure it.
the rectangle
alignments, no?
alignment.
Mhm.
That's the
Okay.
most simple.
Knowing what
Sometimes
you can
upside
do
down,
means that
sometimes
you
a
can
bit blur.
confidently
Yes, yes.
work
So I
your
know
way
like
through
when
everything.
we have
people-
scanned copy in the middle of a big PDF.
Right. How they upload in the document?
They use fax services currently.
So what we want to do is we want to remove
Okay.
The
data
dealers.
analytics from
Dealers,
SQL,
okay.
because
So
it's not a
they
tool.
fax it and we have a imaging
It's a
service.
backend.
Right.
It's not a
So
visualization.
So as long as you
service,
get the
right? So what
image
you
and
want to do
as
is
long
take
as
all the
you
logic
We get a
built as
PNG or
database
something.
into a model in Power BI,
PNG or
and then you can
format.
and do the cognitive service as soon as possible and let them know the quality is
The old
good
approach
or bad
was
so
to
that
push
they can redo
SQL
it
Server to be a
Redo it.
visualization.
instantaneously.
So that is also one process we are telling them to improve.
Alright, good
Sure. Also, you may want to
Anyone
use
else have
a like
questions?
line application to take a picture.
And
Line has
then,
a good
I have
picture quality
maybe two big
with a
questions,
tweak
kind of
size.
related to Power
correct,
BI.
correct, correct,
As,
okay.
That might be easier.
Mm.
By
we
using
are
batch.
in the middle size
Of
financial
course, there is some
company.
security considerations.
That's the
I think we have
biggest challenge for us.
We have
But
the
if you ask
Customer
the
data.
end
Power BI
user,
email license for everybody. The problem is because of some say political issues
or maybe you can
belonging to one
create
department
custom
versus
application.
another department. I need to run maybe 500 million rows the table in some very old SQL server, and they're not giving me a new one. Not giving me a new one because they say this all legacy. They need to migrate to some different departments who will do this much better than we can. I represent the business. They represent IT. They are very low quality in terms of providing service, unfortunately. To do this proper, the management needs to put together business and IT so that we can work together and provide a solution that is capable of PyWPD. It will not happen very soon. So I'm thinking of is there a way to store 500 million of rows in the premium account? You said that there is a bigger capacities.
Yes, but it's not. It's stored. It's
actually publishing that on
in
meetup.com.
a database of that.
Yeah. I can keep the data in the database, but I need a capacity to aggregate it.
So,
Yeah.
so 500 million rows.
That's
is not a problem. Of
Monday,
course, it depends how wide
Thursday.
the row is.
No, only few.
Okay,
Only
I
one
will
measure.
ask him.
So your limit is
Sure,
the model
sure.
size cannot exceed.
Right, thank
Do
you.
know what premium license you're on? P1, P2, P3.
You look very
I don't
decent
know,
today.
but we are buying everything.
Haircut?
We are buying all
Half a
premium.
billion rows is not a lot of data.
Yes,
Because
yes,
but the way that
Looks
the
very
data is
nice.
stored and
For me,
compressed.
currently, yes. Because I'm buying 2008 R2 standard edition.
SQL Server is another issue, but
Yes, yeah.
Power BI storing
Yes,
that data is not a problem.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
So what you want to do is load, you've got 500 million rows. So why not load 10 million rows and look how big the model is.
Yeah.
And it's almost a linear story. That if it's 10 million rows is going to cost you, I don't know, 25 megabytes, well then multiply that by 50 and that'll tell you how big it will be. In a P1, I think the maximum size of your model is 3 or 4 gig, okay, of compressed data.
Yes, yeah.
So 500 million rows is not an issue. All right, so Premium has been designed to store that
The
data.
primary key is repeating all the time, so it's just
Correct.
monthly.
If they're
daily
whole
settings.
numbers and low cardinality, it'll compress really well. Okay, so start with a small set, work out what the formula is, and then you can extrapolate and say 500 million rows, nothing. 1 billion rows is not a problem. You know, we've got an example at Microsoft of 1 trillion rows in a single model, right?
Right, but the thing about the Power BI, it's a BI, it's a report. So you
Yeah,
need to
but
think
I'm
about
looking for workarounds for my.
right. Sometimes
for my
you
data
should
warehouse.
It's not a
put
data
the
store.
aggregated.
You can't bring the data out again. Once it's imported into the service, it's a source for visualization, but you can't query it to load it back out again.
So I can store I can store my data in the old version of SQL Server, but I cannot query this fast enough because it is a standard edition, very old, slow disks, whatever.
Can you fire up an Azure SQL database?
I cannot. I can buy with my private credit card. I ask them. They say no. You need to follow corporate rules, and it will be not allowed.
Well, is the data volatile or it's static?
No, it is every day appending. Every day appending, maybe I don't know, 100,000 rows.
Well, in premium license, the volume's not a problem, and you'll look at the incremental refresh as well. So have a look at the combination of those two things, and that should be a winner, and that will reduce the burden on SQL Server. You just have to query it and say, give me everything since yesterday.
Yes, yeah.
Just have the right indexes on place.
Yes, I have.
Good.
Yes, I have.
Okay, so I think you're set. I don't think you need to invest in anything more. Good.
Okay, it will be a good temporary solution until they find the way.
Yeah.
Well, if Power BI delivers more value for them, they might prioritize it.
No, in fact, they're already connecting to that database and doing this, but we are I need to pre-process, pre-aggregate the data for them to consume this. So they already, somebody in different departments, groups already connecting using Power BI. But I never looked into this because my job is ETL load. But I need also to, after loading and normalizing the data, I need to pre-aggregate the data by different criteria before they can consume, because just too much data for them to consume in raw data.
Okay.
Yeah, so,
Well, I think you just do a little bit of experimentation. You'll find the right balance.
and kind of my bet now is, do we have the premium really? I just need to try it out. And what is the level of the premium?
I think even if you're on the smallest premium, P1 for 500 million rows, not a problem.
Okay.
Good luck.
Thank you.
It sounds like a fun project.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Start small.
So if through the API I can retrieve all the data from the datasets, but why can't I just create my own dashboard and I don't need to pay any premium for?
I'm unclear on your question. What are you asking?
I can retrieve all the data from the datasets from the API, and I can create from the data my own dashboard. I don't need to pay a premium because I can create my own dashboard.
Well, dashboards and premium, they're not a requirement.
No, I mean, but I can, like, okay, I got all the data. I can just create my own dashboard and I can share it to all the people, and it will be for free because I'm.
You can't share.
The share. When you share, you need to pay.
No, but I came out this dashboard. I came out website.
I don't know what you mean by your own dashboard. Not a Power BI dashboard.
No, because I got the data from the API, right?
Well, it sounds like you don't need Power BI. You've already got your own solution.
No, because from the I got all the data gathered from all the clients to Power BI, and then I can take data from the.
You can't. When the data is in Power BI, you must use Power BI dashboards and reports. You can't create your own dashboard of Power BI data.
I can retrieve the data from the API, right?
You cannot
it's
get
a push,
out.
not a pull. It's a push.
Okay.
And that's only for real-time dashboards. That's a very minor story for Power BI. Okay, so real-time dashboards are interesting, but almost nobody does them. The big story for Power BI is that you import the data into Power BI and you have amazing visualizations and sharing of that. We didn't talk about that tonight because it really wasn't directly relevant.
So I cannot retrieve data from the API.
It's a push API, not a pull API.
Okay, that makes sense.
Okay.
Power BI, it is, it integrates with Dynamics CRM also.
So it can connect to all modern data stores. So Dynamics CRM, yes, is a native source for it to connect to.
So we can push the.
No, so you can't do a real-time dashboard on it, but you can build reports over. And in fact, Dynamics CRM has a pre-built app.
Reporting.
You don't even have to build it. You just say authenticate to Dynamics CRM, and it will give you reports and dashboards automatically. So have a look at that. Just do a search on, go to your web search engine, just type in Power BI Dynamics CRM. You'll see complete conversations around that.
But it does not give you the data set, so sometimes you need to directly query in the Dynamics.
Dynamics.
Yeah. Okay, you can build your own custom solution of Dynamics CRM. So have a look at that.
And if you really want to do the real-time stuff, you can use the plugin to push in the data to the Power BI if you want. Or maybe you can run the partial, get data out from partial by using the partial to get data out from Dynamics, push back to Power BI.
And this is the Amazon Quick Site is what the alternate for Power BI, right?
I'm not familiar with the Amazon story, but Tableau is the main compete, and ClickView. But ClickView is dying, so Tableau and Power BI are going to be the two dominant players.
Tableau.
If you're working with Office 365 and you're very Microsoft-centric, Power BI is an easy win.
Or a skill server.
Well, yeah, if you're working with Microsoft Data Platform, okay. So, but if you're with Office 365, it just integrates all the security, all of the security groups. It's seamless. So, from an IT point of view, it's easy.
Yeah, Azure AD is the key, not SQL Server. Azure AD.
Okay. And SSRS and Power BI, it's kind of is it connected at all?
Totally different. SSRS is more.
I see here when I opened it, I can log into SSRS as well.
But the SSRS is more like the reporting purpose. Power BI is more like BI purpose. And that's
I cannot get that part, yeah. But you don't use the same data source or anything like that, right?
You can point to the same data source, yes.
In future, not now. Yeah, the stories are coming together.
Yeah, because I'm building right now SSRS reports.
So you'll find that the purpose of those reports are very different. SSRS reports they're print ready. Whereas Power BI reports are interactive. Okay, you'll find that when you have a reporting requirement, it's either one or the other. Very rarely is it both.
Just for the CEO, I think is Power BI.
If you need to print
operations people, they need
functionalities are SSRS.
Or you've got a lot of reports already built. You don't have to redevelop them. So if you had Power BI report server on premises, this app could connect to it if the DBA opened up the ports. Okay. So it's an interesting story, but for new content, I would discourage this. For older content or content you must print, continue to do this. Okay. All right.
So whenever you have the word report, go for SSRS.
Yeah.
And whenever they say chat.
Hey, no, I had to migrate to report to SSRS. I'm just thinking now, once we do that, can I use Power BI on the kind of same? Is it connected for the CEO? He doesn't care about these detailed reports, he likes things that he can click and see. He loves these things,
Right. And he would want Power BI.
Power BI.
So for him, okay.
Yeah, just give him a prototype. Give him one of each and say, what do you think?
They need to have cloud account, right? Azure.
Power BI report server, no. As I made mention, Power BI report server delivers Power BI reports on premises.
Okay.
Okay. But for
So
companies,
I need to install the report server.
yes.
That's a separate application.
Separate.
And I connect to the SQL database.
Yes,
On-premise,
but
right.
it's licensed through Power BI Premium.
Okay.
Or it's licensed through software assurance with SQL Enterprise.
Okay.
They're the only two ways you can get it. So that's often an obstacle for people.
Very expensive.
Okay.
Um,
They have Azure account. So
So if you're already working in the cloud, then you work with Power BI Doc.
So I just have to push the data there.
Yeah.
And then it should be fine, yeah?
Correct.
Because the current database is inside, so I just have to take some set of data,
Yes,
push to
which means
Azure
you need to install a gateway.
gateway.
So have a look at the topics of Power BI
Okay.
on-premises gateway.
Okay.
And then have a look at how you can open Power BI desktop, connect to SQL Server on premises, build a model, publish it to the cloud,
Okay.
and then it uses the gateway
to
refresh.
to refresh.
And maybe you say every morning at 6 o'clock in the morning,
Yeah.
refresh the data in the service.
So the guy is paranoid, he probably wants every minute.
So it's a common hybrid scenario. Just look up Power BI gateway and you'll see a complete documentation
Okay.
on this.
So desktop gateway, and it's it.
Correct. That's a good start. There's a lot. We could spend all week talking about Power BI, but that's a good start.
I think it's enough for me to build a demo for him. What is actually, because once you hook somebody, then it's easy.
Right, he should be happy.
Well, the easiest thing is just give him Power BI Desktop, show him the reports in Power BI Desktop.
Okay.
If he's then convinced that he wants this,
Yeah.
that's the quickest win. You could do that in one day.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. You don't have to work with the service, although Power BI Desktop is not the end user
This
tool.
just looks cool on iPhone that
Yep.
I can.
Right.
Then put some demo data up there. If you've got a you know, it's very easy to
part. I need to
and then
figure out.
demo how that works. But you know,
Okay,
if
so
you want to get
desktop-
his interest and his buy-in, you
Yeah,
do that
his buy-in.
quickly. Yeah, exactly. Okay, any other questions from anyone?
What is actually the state of our analytical service? Analytics.
SQL Server analysis services.
Okay. Thank you guys.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
It's still part of SQL Server, but Power BI Premium is the new generation. Okay, so
Yeah.
all efforts for analysis
Yeah.
services are Power BI Premium.
So this is supported by the legacy.
Legacy will deploy. So what you can do, you can create Power BI Premium. You can take your existing analysis services databases and push them direct to Power BI. That is coming the next month or two. Okay, so basically SQL Server analysis services, it will still be there, but it's de-emphasized. All new investments, all new features, scale, and performance are being pushed into Power BI Premium. All right, so watch the space. It's truly revolutionary and state of the art. Tableau will come nowhere near this. All right, so it's very exciting stuff.
You're very motivated. You're very enthusiastic about it.
Well, my career has evolved with analysis services. You know, it turned 20 years old last month. So I've been working with it for 18 years. I didn't work with it in the first release. So we did a YouTube video. You can watch it. Happy Birthday Analysis Services. And we got all the community people together and we did a presentation on it. So